Hello everyone, and thank you so much for joining our session, How to Stay Cyber Aware While Working From Home. I'll be your instructor today, Max Greene. I am a part of the Tyler Cybersecurity team, and I act as our cybersecurity awareness consultant. I have conducted cybersecurity awareness trainings nationwide, as well as acted as a social engineer for many of our clients and organizations, in which I would actually use some of the tactics that we're going to discuss and that cyber criminals do use and enact both in our home lives and in our work lives on a daily basis. I have done everything from break into data centers to pose as IT professionals to change customer accounts. So that is my background. I have both studied the cyber criminal and their tactics, as well as how to best protect ourselves as end users and how we can be aware and combat almost every single one of these tactics. So thank you so much for joining me today. Getting started on our agenda. Firstly, we're going to touch on the new normal. What is the new normal? What does that mean for us? We'll get into right to who are we dealing with, what are the threats that we need to be aware of, now more than ever it would seem, how do we adapt and prepare, and what are those best practices. I have questions on here because even though this is a recorded session, we really want everyone to feel that we're all in this together, because we are. So please reach out with questions should anything pop up from this material. My email will be at the end of the session, but also reach out to your Tyler Cybersecurity representatives, reach out to your Tyler representatives. We are here to help. The new normal. The new normal means social distancing, which for us means working from home. Now my hope is that for most of you, you all have an idyllic workspace. You're able to wake up and have that cup of coffee, and things couldn't be better. But that's not true for many of us, and working from home really looks a lot more like this. This is what our work from home reality looks like. It has distractions, it has children, it's chaos. Many of us are sharing our work from home space with our spouses. We're all stuck at home for the first time and navigating what that means with no school and no resources that we're used to having. We don't have our offices and our cubicles, and many of us don't even have the workstations that we're typically used to working on. So, outside of all of these things that we're trying to navigate and get used to, we also need to keep in mind how do we stay secure, and what does that mean for us? And that all starts with understanding this one very basic tenet, and that is that the internet is a shared resource and securing it is our shared responsibility. I often say that we are all the first line of defense for our organizations, but the flip of that coin is we are also all our weakest links. And now more than ever, as we see a serious uptick in social engineering, in cybercrime, a 67% jump alone in phishing in the past month, we all need to be using mindfulness, be using awareness, know the best practices individually so that we can protect not only our organizations, but our homes, our family members, our communities, and our national infrastructure. So who are we looking at? Who is doing this? Well, it's our cyber criminal. Now, of course, these are kind of the thoughts that we conjure up when we think of our cyber criminal. We have many different types of individuals. We think of them as anonymous, which for the most part they absolutely are. One thing to 100% understand about the cyber criminal is that they are after financial gain and they are mostly opportunistic. That is to say that they aren't going to be the type of criminal that walks up to the crowded parking lot outside of a stadium or a concert venue and smashes a window to steal someone's car stereo and Ray-Bans. No, they're going to go around that crowded parking lot and try every single door handle. And the one that for the unfortunate people that forgot to lock their door, whether that be through a strong password or secure protection of their network, then they're going to become the targeted victim. And that's how they're operating most of the time. Now, like I said, we have many different kind of concepts of what actual cybercrime is, what that looks like. For most of us, it's always this guy, right? Sexy mullet dude down in mom's basement. You give him enough Red Bull and Cheetos, he'll hack the CIA or the FBI or any bank you need him to get into. But the reality is, where most of the malicious software and malware is coming from, in terms of how cybercrime is being organized, it looks much more like this. And it doesn't look all that unfamiliar to us, does it? Actual organizations that are selling malware as a service or ransomware as a service to anyone who wishes to buy it. They operate with CEOs and CFOs and HR departments and are talented IT folks working out of third world countries looking to make $100,000 a day. So this is kind of the evolved threat that cybercrime has become, and they are working overtime right now, let me tell you. So the what? What do we need to be aware of as end users? What are we looking for? What are we bracing ourselves for? In our current situation, that is primarily social engineering and what those methods are. This is how the cyber criminals are gaining access to us. They are utilizing email phishing, so posing as a legitimate business or service, or vendor spoofing, posing as a vendor on a service call, attempting maybe to gain access to our desktops, or it's people ITIS spoofing, so people posing as our own IT folks or our information security department staff, pretending to help us with an issue we may have, but in actuality acting maliciously. Website spoofing, so the creating of phony websites that appear to be legitimate. I'll show you some examples that we've seen just in this chaotic time alone of CDC websites and phony World Health Organization websites that we should all be aware of. Phone spoofing. Phone spoofing is the act of hijacking the caller ID to make it appear as if the caller is calling from that legitimate service or person. Charity scamming is another big one, especially right now. Again, as most of us try to work together and come together and figure out how we can move forward in this difficult and confusing time, we have the cyber criminals out there taking advantage of the good nature of many folks and looking for financial support, corona themed right now, or whatever have you. So making sure that as we're looking at any of these things online, looking at them with a grain of salt, and just being aware of them in general, and especially when giving to a charity, do your research to make sure you are giving to a legitimate one. Another thing I want to mention, and that I didn't make on this list but is popular just because of the current time, is people sending out emails acting as different conference vendors. Many of us would be approaching conference season right now and had places to go and be, and now we're seeing an uptick in emails coming from those conferences, people that have gained access to registration lists, etc., and are sending out things saying, hey, if your conference has been canceled, click here for the full refund. Please be hyper aware of that as well. As I mentioned, phishing and scams are on the rise during this time. The criminals will take advantage of the chaos we have from working home, the fear we have about our current climate, and the fact that so many of us are in the dark and we don't know what the future holds for us. This is one of the strongest examples of a phishing email that we've seen in the past year. This was incredibly popular, coming right from Netflix. Now, in this particular time, might hit home even harder, as none of us are ready to go without our streaming services, especially while we're all quarantined and stuck. But this type of phishing attempt can be stopped so quickly in its tracks, and the answer is not by clicking the link in this email where it tells us, "Dear Netflix," and of course that would be a clue for us as well because we're not Netflix, but "Dear Netflix, we are sending this email to let you know your credit card has been expired. To update your account information, please visit your account." And it looks to have you click on this link. Now, if we were to hover over this hyperlink, it would tell us for certain we are going nowhere near Netflix.com. It will have us put in our credit card number, and all we've done is become compromised ourselves. Now, what we could do in this situation, if we weren't sure, and not just for Netflix, but any account-based email, is simply visit the account, open up a web browser, type in Netflix, go to your application, visit Netflix, and any other method other than following this link. And if this is a true email from Netflix, or it's a true email from your financial institution, or it's a true email from your insurance firm, then that message will live in the account as well. So always just visit the account itself. Here is an example of a phishing email being sent out by the CDC, of course filled with attachments, which we always want to be weary of, especially attachments we aren't expecting, because they always can contain malware in their documents. So we don't want to bring those directly down, and we want to look at the emails that are going out as the CDC with scrutiny, so we're not receiving false information. Again, as mentioned, we're seeing a lot of emails go out as the World Health Organization. Here is one that we've seen as an example. All employees will receive mandatory paid leave to avoid the spread of COVID-19 novel coronavirus starting March 13. Offices will resume after 2 weeks of the mandatory closure. Please click here to see if your company has been listed. Again, taking advantage of the confusion that all of us have been going through, and especially early on, and this has continued. This has been another popular thing, harvesting credentials using DocuSign. Sending out a World Health Organization guidelines against coronavirus. Sign in to download the instructions in order to gain your typical workplace credentials or what you may use for DocuSign. Here again, just a regular account type email. But as we take a closer look, right, it's telling us it's from Apple service. We've been told that our Apple ID has been temporarily locked because someone in Tajikistan has tried to access our account. So log in here. Of course, if you hovered over this link and didn't click, it would tell you you're going nowhere near apple.com. And if we just looked close at the email, right, it says from Apple service, but the sender is clearly not Apple service. We don't recognize the sender. This doesn't make sense to us. Again, what could we do? Simply visit our Apple account. Here we're seeing insurance theme phish. Again, preying on people's health concerns, so things are going out as health insurance emails. Here's how you pay your invoice. Here's how you get the latest coverage. Here's how you sign up for your free coronavirus test. And we're also seeing insurance-themed emails in terms of business policies. Businesses that have been deemed non-essential that are getting emails about updating their policy for loss of business use, all to lure them into this false sense of hope. So again, that could be stopped by simply visiting your account, not following it in the email. I put up this example only because it's marked up like my 3rd grade paper and couldn't be made more clear, right? We receive an email from Bank of America. We look closely at it. The sender is Bank of America, but we see it's actually crpdgi@comcast.net. And who's it being sent to? Well, not just us, but undisclosed recipients, so us and maybe 1,000 or more blind seed people. It can't be specific to us. When we reply, we're not replying to Bank of America, we're replying to that Comcast.net address. Now here it has us actually visit bankofamerica.com, and you're all probably thinking, well, that is where my account lives. But again, as we see here, if you were to hover over the link, this is what would be displayed, and it would tell us the address we're going to is actually bit.do/blah blah, and again, not going anywhere near Bank of America. But if we took this address and typed it in to our URL address bar, then we would actually be going to Bank of America. This is a phenomenal resource that I would encourage all of you to take. It is a free phishing quiz provided by Google. I'm sure that all of you are like, well, I don't want to just click on a link being provided. I can tell you this is a safe link. It's a great combination of legitimate and phishing emails asking the user to suss out which is which. And I'm hopeful that by the end of this training and the skills that you've learned, you'll all be able to get 100%. But it's great practice. Share it with your employees, your friends, your children, to get them into the mindset and practicing mindful use and the tools that if we all are armed with, we can cut down on cybercrime. Here we have an example of website spoofing. Of course, the goal here is to make it appear as if we're at Chase Online. Now, when I ask many people, where are we? They're able to confidently tell me we're at 5starmanager.com. Now, of course, there are plenty of things here to make it appear as if we're at Chase Online. We have the Chase logo, both on the page and in the address bar. We have cchase.com. We see chaseonline.chase.com even in the web address itself. But we're going to learn a rule together, and we'll hammer it home, and that is, when looking at an address and uncertain of where we are being directed or where we actually are, we can always follow this rule. And that is to find the first / in any web address, and then go backwards to the first two dots. So first we go to the end of 5-Star Manager, then we go one more dot over, and that makes us certain we are really just at 5starmanager.com. These, chaseonline.chase.com, are simply folder names, put there to confuse us. There are of course a few other clues. We don't see an HTTPS and a lock here, so we know that this site doesn't have a certificate. And although we don't want to rely on that alone, knowing our rule, we know that we are at 100% at 5starmanager.com and not, in fact, at Chase Online. I put this up as an example as well because as my time acting as a social engineer and a cyber criminal attempting to get organizations to visit websites we were directing them towards, we would commonly put the name of their organization or their bank or their hospital or their city in the front of the web address we were directing folks to. This is a common tactic used by the cyber criminal. So not only are they using the folder names afterwards, but putting the legitimate name ahead of it. So again, following our rule though, if we look for that first /, we can see that we are clearly just at vsgcloud.com. The Tyler Tech in front of it means nothing. One more time, just so we all know the rule for sure. Here we have it illustrated. Here's our first /. We go 2 dots back. We see we are clearly just at airlinemembers.com. Again, just hammering home that we do always want to be aware of any attachments we receive or download via email, as these attachments may be malicious and can bring down malware or unwanted software onto our devices. If receiving these types of attachments aren't part of our daily job function, then simply delete them and do not open them. If we receive them and they do not make sense, try to reach out to the sender, and not just through email, as well as right click on them and scan them using antivirus, or forward them to our IT departments so that they can do their due diligence before you have opened them on your devices. So let's discuss a few more work from home targeted fraud that we are seeing consistently across the board. Social media. Social media is always riddled with fraud, to say the least. But now, as we all do find ourselves in a time of social distancing and almost craving that social interaction, many of us are using social media even more than we were before, and so we do need to address the pitfalls and worries about social media. And then just touching on some of that quickly. For starters, being mindful about what we're clicking on. Even if that advertisement calls to us or it is now half price, just because that advertisement might be safe, do we know the site we're visiting? Do we know where it's redirecting us? Carefully managing our security and privacy settings. Utilizing dual factor, which we will touch again upon and hammer home. Being skeptical of friend requests. Who are the people friending us? If they're friends that we're already friends with, do we really need to be friends with them twice before accepting a friend request of someone we are actually friends with? Reach out to them directly. Make sure that their accounts aren't being used fraudulently. Because again, if people have poor security or privacy settings, it's as simple as copying down your profile and then friending your friends for malicious purposes. Understand how your information is shared and your identity used. Don't put your whole life out there. Turn off location services for social media, especially photographs. One example of all three of these at once that I've seen is people taking pictures of their work from home stations and posting them on their social media. Are we thinking about the type of knowledge that we've now given the cyber criminal that may be trying to gain access to our systems? Do they now know, that you're vulnerable and what systems you're on and where you are? Do we have strong passwords for our social media accounts? Are we updating those passwords? Change those passwords. And close accounts you don't use. If you found love on Tinder and you don't use it anymore, or you left Facebook ages ago and you only use Instagram, make sure those accounts are closed and deleted, and that people aren't utilizing those accounts, again, for fraudulent purposes against you. Because that can be harmful not only to ourselves, our organizations, but also our friends and our fellow citizens. And absolutely be making sure that we are not engaging with our employees or our customers in social media, as there is really no way to verify that this is them definitively. Recognizing SMS text message fraud. This is rampant. This has been rampant, but I'm sure that, like me, the rest of you are seeing even more of this in our current time. Everything from click here for your stimulus money tomorrow, or sign up for your free 5 rolls of toilet paper for being an Amazon preferred member. Whatever it may be. We're also seeing an uptick of financial institutions looking like they're sending out fraud alerts, when in reality they absolutely aren't. So people are clicking on this and providing their banking credentials. We need to be wary of these things. We need to know and ask ourselves, do these make sense? Am I expecting these? Why would I be receiving this? Avoiding any of those kind of gambity, gimmick type text messages that we may be receiving. As good as they sound, the old adage, it seems too good to be true, is more than likely the case. And again, if you receive a message from an organization or an institution or an account that you are connected to, don't respond to the text message. Call the account directly. Again, we're seeing messages like this. Coronavirus outbreak in the US confirmed. Each person has 1 protection dosage. Now, these messages are harmful. Many of us, are able to kind of suss out which messages are legit and not legit, but know that not all of us are. So educate our children, educate our elderly, educate those that are less aware in your household or in your community, so that we're not seeing people fall victim to these types of attacks as well. Now, I often get asked, well, what can we actually do as users to mitigate things like smishing attacks or scam calls? And this is something you can do. You can send those messages to 7726, which spells spam, on your keypad, and this will allow cell phone carriers to identify these senders. It takes steps to limit messages from them going forward. We can also file a complaint with the Federal Trade Commission and the Federal Communications Commission. These are the agencies that do enforce the laws regarding scam calls and text messages. And you can do so by using the links below, visiting FTC complaintassistance.gov or fcc.gov. The power of the spoofed call really can't be over-exaggerated or understated. It, again, is the criminals taking away the inherent trust that caller ID was supposed to give all end users. It was supposed to tell us who was actually calling, whether it was a client or a vendor or our own coworkers. Unfortunately, the bad guys have taken this away from us and are now using it against us for fraudulent purposes. They can call as someone you've saved in your contacts and have it appear as them. They can call as your financial institution. However, they don't own this phone number. They can simply call appearing to be that phone number. So, scrutinize that, be aware of that. If something doesn't feel right, question it. Look up the actual number and call that number back, because the scammer does not own that number. They're only able to act as that number. An example of this is many of you have probably even received a call from your own phone number, and I know from personal experience that's incredibly stressful, as this might be your Back to the Future moment. I mean, what if you've traveled back in time to warn yourself about the dangers of the coronavirus? Please tell yourself right now that you will leave a voicemail, and just understand that the criminals will utilize this tactic against us. Best practices in staying secure. How do we do this? Well, for starters, going right from the spoof call, always verify who you're speaking to. Do this in a real way. Don't just rely, on our old guard of last four of social and mother's maiden name, but ask account-based questions, ask relationship-based questions. Make sure you know you are speaking to a legitimate party, especially if we are still dealing with clients and customers and their information. Understand that no information we give out before or after verifying can be considered innocuous information. If we even simply give yes or no responses about customer information, we are providing the potential cyber criminal with a profile. Right? They might make many calls, and in this one call, they now know a piece they didn't before. This also goes for if you receive a call of someone pretending to be your IT folks or a vendor that you work closely with. A human nature kind of stops us from not wanting to let someone know when we've been fooled. So it's really hard when you receive a call from IT and someone, or Microsoft or whatever it is, and they say, oh, we're working on this issue, with Internet Explorer. And maybe you say something like, well, we only use Safari. Click, because you know that it was a scam and you've showed them. Well, all you've really done is given your potential attacker more information so that they can have more credibility moving forward in their next attempt. As a group, as a society, we also all need to get to a place where we elevate security and the importance of that, and verifying customers, especially in a social distance world where we are having so much less customer person-to-person interaction, that customer service and security are now on the same playing field. We are asking these verification questions to protect not only our organizations, but to protect our customers and our clients and our community and our patients, etc., etc., etc. So be patient, as people will be frustrated in this time, but don't let that make your standard of security go down by any means. If anything, let it be increased. Again, remember that we shouldn't just be relying on the kind of old guard of security questions like the last four of the social, or the mother's maiden name, or address, or date of birth. One, because most of that information is out there, whether it be just in your social media or due to the many, many breaches we've seen, whether it be an Equifax or Capital One or an Uber or a Marriott, or a Target or a Home Depot, etc., etc., etc. So be thinking of how we want to verify people and the processes that we're going to put in place to do so. All other things we can do in case of a potential attack, and all of these can be applied. Can I call you back? Again, if we're uncertain if we're speaking to, and we can look up that number on file in our systems, or we can Google the legitimate number, do so and call them back. Asking ourselves, do I know who I'm speaking to? Do I know this person well enough? Do I know what kind of questions I can ask to verify them? How can I decide whether I can continue this conversation? Did I initiate this? Did I call this person? Did this person call me? Does this make sense? And am I expecting this? Should this person be calling for this type of information? Does that make sense to me right now? In terms of did I initiate this? Think about if the IRS were to call you asking for your social security number, well, absolutely not. But if you were to call the IRS and they ask for your social security number, that would make sense. These same practices can be applied for the most part in any correspondence. If you've received an email, who is this coming from? Do I know who this is? Why would this make sense to me? Did I initiate this communication? Am I expecting this communication or this attachment? And if the answer is no to any of those things, then we can move on. We can delete these emails. Even can I call you back? If you are concerned that you're getting emails from folks that may even be appearing as legitimate, using accounts with names that we recognize but aren't their business accounts, or even utilizing business accounts that maybe just appear to be compromised due to poor password protection, and you're receiving instructions outside of the norm. Can I call you back? Don't just respond via email. Figure out another way to engage with that person so you can confirm that these correspondents are legitimate. So these 4 things. Knowing your organization's policies and procedures, knowing where those live, knowing what they are, what is expected of us, how we can protect ourselves, how we can access our VPNs, our virtual private networks, what sites we shouldn't be visiting, how should we be sending large files. If we don't have these policies and procedures and you're responsible for creating them, create them, document them, improve on them, learn from this experience. If you don't have them now, and when this is all over, absolutely add to them, and make sure those are always available and known to all. Passwords and multi-factor. Multi-factor, again, could not be more important. Getting back to that idea of how the cyber criminal is typically so opportunistic, simply having that double lock, the regular lock and the padlock, if you will, is what you could consider the multi-factor. So your password being that first authentication, and then once putting in your credentials, you'll receive a code via text or call with a code specific to you that you would then put in on top of that first authentication layer. It can be enacted for everything. It can be the difference between compromised and not. You're not going to have your email compromised if you have multi-factor engaged for the most part, because you'll receive a code as soon as someone has successfully typed in your credentials, and you can very quickly react to that. So, again, we'll revisit it, but can't express how important it is to enable multi-factor. Passwords in general should be at least 15 characters long with numbers and special characters, or the converted phrase at least 10 characters long with upper or lower case and special characters. Do avoid the ambiguous characteristics. For example, here we have password with just $2 signs. That's really no stronger than password. Avoid names and patterns and sequences. If you were tweeting about the fact that you're going on walks with your dog Polly every day, especially now that you're working from home, well, don't make every password Polly123. Avoid patterns and sequences. What we see all too often in our testing and from our clients who may have been compromised is just a simple, weak password like a season and year. For many of you listening to this, maybe your password right now for your workstation is spring 2020, and in 90 days you will change it to summer 2020. Get away from those types of conventions. Again, it only takes one, so none of us want to be the person with that type of password. Don't use the same password for multiple sites where protected or sensitive information is exchanged. That's for one simple reason, and that is because if you were compromised one place, you don't want to be compromised every place at the same time. So make sure we're not all relying on one password for all of our sensitive information. And then consider, for all these reasons, using a password manager. Dashlane or LastPass are examples of this, where you can have these long complex passwords stored either on cloud-based or on our devices, and then we simply need to log into those to get our unique and long passwords back, or it will generate new passwords each time depending on the password manager. So absolutely do your research and look into that. Anything we can do to protect ourselves, our organizations, is all the more we can do in fighting back from the cyber criminals and keeping every single one of us protected. Acceptable use. Especially now as we use our work computers from home, or we're using our personal computers, ask yourself, what sites am I visiting? What have I allowed my children to visit, my spouses? Because you can be infected just by visiting a site and not clicking on anything. These are known as drive-by download attacks or drive-by malware. So even if you think sites may be legitimate, kind of have that spam alert on. We'll touch on it on the next slide, but be wary of where we're visiting and going. Again, revisiting multi-factor just quickly, it is that extra layer, that receiving of the code via text or phone number, but always enable it. Do it for your online banking, do it for your email, both personal and work, do it for your social media accounts, anything that could be considered sensitive information. And then never share your multi-factor authentication code. What we're seeing now by a lot of scammers is that they will simply attempt to reset a password, or they'll have the first layer of authentication and then actually reach out directly to the user, posing as a financial institution or a member of that service or account, citing fraud or difficulties in the account or suspicious activity on the account, and then asking the user to please read back the code that they should have received. And really all now you've done is given the code to the scammer so they can lock you out of said account. Now sometimes Financial institutions I know might use this, like Bank of America I know uses this, for example, where if you've gotten deep enough in the verification process, they may simply say, can we please send you a code, or visit your, we're going to text you a code, please log it into your online banking. So those types of situations make sense, but ask yourself, when this makes sense. If you've called your financial institution and then they've asked you to give them the code, that is different than you receiving a call from someone claiming to be your financial institution. If you have received the multi-factor code and you have not initiated the process, contact your help desk, if this is for your password, or the organization, if it's for anything else, and update that password immediately for that account. Video conferencing. Video conferencing has also become part of our new norm as we attempt to still have our daily communications, and even as we start to miss our coworkers and we want to see their faces and have strong communication and team building, we're flocking to this idea of video conferencing that many of us are not familiar with or used to. So some things we need to be thinking of and being mindful about. For starters, setting passwords for these online meetings. Thinking about the conversations that we're having, making sure that they are still secure for just our employees. Setting individual meet times. Many folks are just leaving conference lines open so that would-be attackers or whomever are gaining access to these meetings. Also, things like double checking our invitation lists. Are we used to setting these things up? Who have we actually invited to these meetings? Not just sending it out to everyone, so that if we are in a confidential meeting, not everyone has access. What are we sharing on our screens? What is open in the background? Do we have any client data? Are we thinking about that? As we log into these sessions, many of these types of video conferencing will kind of automatically put credentials in, or usernames you've used in the past in. What's being displayed, or have you now compromised a username on the screen? So understanding all of this, going in depth, researching these different types of video conferencing, so you know what data is being shared. Make sure we're doing our due diligence there and acting as safely as possible when conducting these video conference meetings. Ensuring that our devices have antivirus and the latest updates. If you're a Spectrum customer, all of you can download McAfee Security Suite for free for up to 3 devices for Macs and PCs. This offers really a pretty incredible bevy of services, everything from firewall protection to keep users out and white and blacklist sites, to parental controls, to monitor screen time and the sites that your children are able to access, to alerting to potential virus sites or spam sites, spam blockers, and of course, as well as just simply having antivirus on your machine and running scans for any potential viruses already living on your machines in order to alert you to them, and application scanning as well for vulnerabilities. So it's a great type of service if you're not already if you don't already have antivirus on your machines, or you're not sure, absolutely look into downloading it. If you're not a Spectrum customer, look into what your internet provider may offer, if they do offer any of these services for free. And if they do not, well, then these services are really pretty reasonably priced. And pretty strong in terms of our home devices and our home environment. You can get the McAfee suite for about $34.99. But to the same time, please do your due diligence. Don't just bring down any antivirus site advertised, as it could be doing quite the opposite and downloading malware onto your machine instead of alerting you to potential malware. In terms of acceptable use, continued locking down our Wi-Fi. So change the default name to your Wi-Fi. Make your wireless network password unique and strong. We've talked about passwords, but we can't stress this enough, especially for your wireless network. Please make that a unique and strong password. Enabling network encryption. So making sure you do put a type of encryption around your network when setting it up. Turn off network broadcasting name. This will make it so that your neighbors and surrounding area will not see your Wi-Fi being broadcasted. Keep your router software up to date. If this isn't happening automatically, make sure you're taking steps to do so. Again, making sure you do have a good firewall. Making sure you've enabled a firewall if it is an option. And hopefully most of us are utilizing our virtual private networks to access your organization's network. Connecting back to your network's network, and so this way all of our traffic and anything that we are doing on our workstations does have the same level of eyes and protection on it that it typically would in our work environments. If you're unaware of how to do any of these steps, reach out to your IT folks, your help desks. Google a lot of these. They're very easy steps to follow, but do your research to follow up on every single one of these. Something that would seem obvious, but we may forget to do: leave confidential information. Never leave confidential information unattended, even at home. With kids in the chaos of life, we don't want these documents swept up with other things. So we should all have confidential information bins underneath our desks. Typically in our workplaces we would have a secure place for this, large confidential shred bins, but making sure that anything with NPI, client data, or customer data, confidential documents for work that may have been printed or may be in our possession are being stored securely so that we can return them to those secure confidential destruction bins once we are able to return to our offices. Remembering to contact the help desk or IT for anything, whether it is to know how to simply set yourself up to be more secure in the steps that we've spelled out, or if you are concerned that you've clicked on a phishing email or responded to an SMS text message fraud and your devices might be infected. Reach out to them, report anything, ask them questions. They are here to help. And they're going to want to be aware as well so that they can know if your device is infected and take steps to fix that and move forward. All organizations should be putting an emphasis on training and education. Be attending webinars such as this one, looking for answers and how-to, as well as educating our fellow employees and our customers. As we learn, they should learn. And that's how we'll all grow and stay protected together. And I'll leave you with this. Again, always be mindful. Always take the extra second, look at the link, follow our rules, ask ourselves, is what's happening make sense? Follow the gut check. If we do all the things that we've learned in this session, we can turn most cyber attacks into vapor. And hopefully we can keep ourselves secure enough and secure moving forward for as long as we need to be working from home, and in the future, just when we choose to work from home. Hopefully we all know and take the responsibility to be mindful users, to be responsible users, and don't just see it as protecting our organizations or our companies, but protecting our families and our homes and our communities. So again, thank you so much for joining me, and reach out should you need anything from Tyler Technologies. As stated, this is my email here. We look forward to any questions, feedback, things you'd like to see in the future. Talk to us. We want to hear from you, and we want to have more sessions like this for you moving forward. Thank you so much.